Tonight you come home, unlock the door, step inside. You put your keys down. You take off your shoes. You close the door behind you. All of that happens in about 10 seconds, and you do not think about any of it. A person living 300,000 years ago had no door to open, no keys, no floor to set anything down on. He stood in the dark under an open sky, listening for sounds he could not identify, and then chose a place to lie down, hoping that nothing found him before morning. You lived that way for far longer than you have lived in a house. So what changed? And what did it change in you? You think of caves as the first human homes, that your ancestors retreated into them, lit fires, and called it shelter. The reality is more complicated. Caves were not common. Not every landscape had them, and the deep caves suitable for shelter were usually already occupied by cave bears, cave lions, and hyenas that had no intention of sharing. For most of human prehistory, your ancestors slept outside entirely, with nothing overhead. They moved with food, with water, with seasons. The concept of home as a place you always return to did not exist. For more than 2 million years, your ancestors slept in trees or on open ground. Researchers at Indiana University in 2018 analyzed spinal bone traces from over 400 fossils of Homo ergaster and Homo heidelbergensis and found that their back structures were adapted for climbing. They slept in trees at night to avoid predators, exactly as modern chimpanzees still do. Sleeping in a tree was not comfortable. It was the difference between waking up and not. What drove humans toward shelter was not laziness or the desire for comfort. It was climate. Around 800,000 years ago, Earth entered a cycle of prolonged ice ages. Temperatures swung sharply between seasons, storms arrived without warning, and nights in open terrain could drop far below freezing. A body exposed to that kind of cold without fire or cover would not survive the week. Archaeologist Nama Goran Inbar at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem in 2004 excavated the site of Ohaloi in Israel and found evidence of branch and leaf shelters dating to 23,000 years ago. Small, low structures, just tall enough to block wind and hold the warmth of a small fire inside. Each shelter had been built near the water's edge, close enough to fish but sheltered from the wind coming off the lake. The people who built them came back repeatedly. The accumulated debris of daily life was still there when excavation teams reached it 23,000 years later. Not houses, but the first acknowledgement that an open sky was no longer enough. And those shelters gave humans something no one talks about: darkness that belonged only to them. For the first time in the history of the species, there was a space where the eyes of others could not reach. The earliest confirmed structure built deliberately was not a cave and not a tent. In 2010, archaeologist Naira Alperson-Afil and a research team at the University of Haifa published findings from Ohaloi, the foundations of 6 oval structures, each roughly 3 to 5 square meters, made from branches bent and pressed into the ground to form low domes. Inside each structure was a small hearth at the center. Around each hearth were fish bones, plant seeds, and grinding stones. This was not a place people stopped for one night. This was a place people came back to. A place where they ate, repaired tools, slept, and woke up. The first home had no walls. It had a fire at its center and a defined space around it. That was enough. The first builders were not Homo sapiens. The oldest evidence of intentional structure comes from Neanderthals. In 2013, archaeologist Jacques Jaubert at the University of Bordeaux discovered inside Bruniquel Cave in southern France a construction made from more than 400 broken stalagmite pieces, arranged into 2 concentric rings, 336 meters deep inside the cave, dated to 176,000 years ago. There is no natural light at that depth. Not a single photon reaches 336 meters into a cave system. The Neanderthals had to carry torches the entire way in and the entire way out. They had to break each stalagmite with deliberate force, stack the pieces carefully, and arrange them into a shape that served some purpose no one has yet been able to fully explain. The construction required planning, coordination, and sustained effort in total darkness. Some researchers believe the rings were used for ritual. Others suggest storage or shelter from cold cave air. What matters is not the function. What matters is that Neanderthals, A species we spent centuries dismissing as primitive, were building enclosed structures nearly 200,000 years ago. The need to create a bounded space, a place with an inside and an outside, appeared long before Homo sapiens entered the story. From the Ohalo'e shelters to the apartment you live in now is a journey of 23,000 years. And most of the largest changes happened in the last 10,000. When agriculture appeared around 12,000 years ago in the Fertile Crescent, humans had a reason for the first time not to move. Fields needed planting, harvesting, and guarding. A house became something you built once and stayed in. At Saydelhuyuk in Turkey, one of the best preserved ancient settlements ever excavated, dating to 9,000 years ago. Houses were built so close together there were no streets between them. People entered and exited through the roofs, climbing down ladders into the interior. Each house had a cooking area, a sleeping area, and a burial space directly beneath the floor. The dead were not in a cemetery. They were under your feet every morning when you woke up. The house and memory were the same thing. From Saydelhuyuk onward, houses changed materials, from mud brick to stone to timber to reinforced concrete. They changed in size, from 5 square meters to hundreds. They changed in social meaning, from shared community spaces to family units to single-person apartments. In Japan today, there are more than 8 million abandoned houses called ikea, places that no one returns to anymore. But what has not changed across all of that is the core psychological function, a boundary between mine and the world. A house did something to the human brain that nothing else could. When you had a place to return to, for the first time in the history of the species, you could accumulate tools, stored food, clothing, objects that carried memory. Things impossible to carry when you are always moving. That accumulation created ownership. Ownership created inequality. Inequality created complex social structure. Every element of civilization, writing, law, trade, art, science, was built on the foundation of something very simple. A place where you put things down and knew they would still be there in the morning. A house also changed how you sleep. Before shelter existed, the human brain slept in a state of partial alertness, always ready to respond to a sound, a smell, a movement in the dark. One ear was always listening. One part of the brain never fully switched off. Matthew Walker at the University of California, Berkeley, has written extensively about the relationship between perceived safety and sleep architecture. When the brain does not feel secure in its environment, it suppresses the deepest stages of sleep to maintain vigilance. Once there was a bounded space with a defined perimeter, the brain gradually learned to fully release during the night. Sleep became deeper. The body repaired itself more completely. Memory was consolidated more efficiently. Some neuroscientists argue that the dramatic expansion of the human brain in the last 100,000 years came not only from richer food or more complex language, but in part from the quality of sleep that became possible once humans had a safe and enclosed place to fully close their eyes and stop listening. Tonight, you come home, unlock the door, step inside, you put your keys down, you close the door behind you. In that moment, your brain runs a calculation written 23,000 years ago. Outside is the world. Inside is mine. No predator enters here. No stranger looks in here. I can let go. You did not build that house. You inherited it from every person who came before you and figured out, one small step at a time, how to stay. But the feeling when the door closes behind you, that small exhale, that is 300,000 years of your species finally breathing out. The question is not when humans first had a home. The question is who you would be without one.